All right. I think that worked. Maybe? Oh, I don't think it worked. What the
Hmm.
hell? You'd think I've Instagrammed before.
Have
Let me see.
you ever
Add to
been used
story.
Instagram?
A few times, off
I've
and
never
on.
seen you on there.
Hmm. All right. Um, I'm gonna try to multitask, which is never a good idea. So I'm not very good at it. But how are things going over on the east coast of the country, Avery?
Very hot right now, currently.
Really?
We had a big heat wave. Yeah, it was pretty melty. I left my energy drink in the car earlier for not that long, and it was like sipping hot coffee, but
Whoa.
way more
Yeah,
disgusting.
I was gonna say
Like it burned
carbonated.
a little.
Carbonated coffee. Is that a thing? It
Yeah,
sounds like a thing. Somebody's
I'm
had to
sure
have done it.
there's. If it's not a thing, maybe it should be. Maybe I don't know.
Well, we should get a hold of Caveman Coffee and see if we can get a little piece of that action.
There we go.
I don't know. Okay. I got this new phone. It's a LG, and I haven't used an LG before, so I'm just dinosaur slow trying to put this post up. I apologize.
No, don't apologize. How's stuff in Canada right now?
I love it when you Americans say that. It's like Canada's one place.
It's huge. I
Yeah, it's like, so, where are we going to meet? Oh, I'll see you in Canada. Okay, yeah, I know where that is.
know.
Things in Canada are pretty good considering it is Canada Day. So
That
this
is
is the
right.
day that
Happy Canada
Canada was
Day.
birthed. Yeah, yeah, I'm actually, you might hear some fireworks going off at some points. So
That's fun. They've
it's,
been setting off fireworks here because 4th of July is coming up. So
yeah,
America Day is also coming.
y'all got to do it so much bigger.
Like, we know it's your day, Canada, but take this
Yeah,
a few days
yeah,
early.
yeah, you guys are cute, but bitch, watch this. All right, I think that's got it up. Okay, the peoples know. Now I can show our
Yay.
faces. All right, switching over, twitching over here on Twitch with the people. Okay, well, I am here, wonderful people, for episode number 5 of You, Me, and Us. And I have a very cool guest today in Averi Clements, who is a Jiu-Jitsu Times Journalist as well as BJJ Purple Belt. How's it going today?
Going pretty well, Drew. How are you doing?
I am probably less tired than you are.
Yeah, it's midnight over here.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. On top of that, we were going over a little bit what your day was like today, and that sounds like an epic training day. So tell everybody what you were up to today.
so I went with my coach from where I train at the academy in Pittsburgh, Marshall Carper and his wife Karis. We went up to Consecution Jiu-Jitsu, which is in Ohio. And so that trip is about 2 hours and 15 minutes long. We left, I believe, at 11:15 in the morning to get there so I could teach a 2 o'clock class and then a 3 o'clock class. And then there was open mat at 4. So it was a total of about 3 hours worth of training. And then we had to make the 2 hour, 15-minute trip back. So it's been a long day. I think we got back at around 9 or so because we stopped for dinner too.
Oh,
So it was a long day.
that's crazy. So you taught 2 classes and did an open mat with a 6-hour round trip involved?
Yeah, almost. So Jake Props, the owner, he injured his hand, and then he had a super fight. So he injured his hand like right as the match started. Still won the match,
Oh,
which is pretty
damn,
badass.
that is
Uh,
badass.
yeah, but he's kind of taken the week off, and so he's been having a bunch of other instructors come in and teach the classes. So told him I'd come up for the day.
Oh, so you did him a solid.
Yeah, I mean he's done me a few solids too. So
Well,
couldn't tell Fred.
you're in New York, right?
I'm in
So,
Pennsylvania.
oh, okay. I was gonna say
Yeah.
you do him a salad. A
It's sal-
salad. Is that how you say it? A
salad.
salad.
Yeah, we're from Pittsburgh, so like we go like downtown. Like went downtown. I don't know how I'd say salad in a Pittsburgh accent. It's really pretty ugly accent.
Yeah, we're gonna be a mess of accents if you got Pittsburgh and I got Canada, eh?
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry if I'm gonna be all about that this time, guys. Okay.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
that's
actually,
amazing.
for the people watching, I'm wearing my prototypical Canadiana threads here on Canada Day.
Is your moose somewhere in the house?
No, he doesn't get up this late. He's down.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's bedded beside my huskies.
Drinking up that maple syrup. That's all Canadians do.
Yeah, it
Canadians
puts
and
him to
their
sleep. So I remember last year you had your own super fight, did you not? Or was that this year?
That was, I think, last July.
Okay, so
Yeah,
like a year
wow.
back.
Yeah, so that was a fight to win match the first time they came to Pittsburgh.
I look at those fight to win promotions and they are some of the like rock starest looking promotions I've seen for pro BJJ. Like they got smoke effects like the old UFC and they got
Yeah,
laser light shows and a big walkout area. I'm actually
yeah,
not mad at
yeah,
any of that.
yeah. Well, Seth Daniels, when he started it, it started, I believe, as like an MMA promotion.
Okay.
And he got sick of like the MMA scene and was like, I want to have that level of production, but for jujitsu, so that people see that, like, normally when people go to a jujitsu tournament, they see, it's like the food sucks and like it's just a bunch of people rolling on like a mat somewhere in a high school gym. And so he wanted people to be able to take their friends and their family and see it as like jujitsu's fucking cool. And then hopefully the people who didn't do jujitsu before would go home and say like, I want to sign up for this because this is neat. Um,
Right. Uh,
and so he's done a really good job with it. I think they're on, I want to say, man, I can't even remember
like
how many they've done. I think
300th promotion or something by now?
yeah, they're coming up on that. I want to say they just had 88, but don't quote me on that. I think they
Wow.
just had Fight to Win 88. So yeah, they like it's a rock star production, but like the people who put it on, it's a ridiculously small team, and
Huh.
they do such a good job every time.
Yeah, I don't follow Seth honestly, but I follow Mike Columbus and he calls it Team No Sleep.
Yeah, and it is because they legit don't sleep. Like they start sometimes the day before if they can get into the venue, and they work their butts off for hours. And again, these are not like massive bodybuilder type like people. Like there's a couple girls on the team who are. The one is Brittany Elkin, who just fought. I can't remember the judoka's name, but Brittany's been in a Bellator fight. She's like jacked, and a couple of the guys do jujitsu, and so they're all like, they're athletes, most of them, but the amount of work that they do, the amount of lifting stuff that they do, like they legit don't sleep, and they have many times gone until like 5 a.m, 6 a.m before like it gets all taken down. Like they do an
Yeah,
incredible job with that. They don't sleep.
that's insanity. I like that if you follow the promotion, at least on the social media side, as I do, um,
Hmm.
you'll notice that at least a short handful of the people that work or run this, including Seth himself, actually compete in his own show. And like
Yeah,
I run tournaments myself, and people have asked me like if I'm going to do a super fight. I'm like, I don't have the time of day. I'm running
yeah,
around like a chicken with my head cut off all day. I can't stop to do anything, including jujitsu. So I
yeah.
like seriously, hats off to a guy who can put on a gi mid-show, go fight somebody, and then gi down, finish the show, and tear down until 5 a.m. That's all sorts of badass.
Yeah, and it's not just Seth. Brittany, the other girl, does it, and a couple of the other people do jujitsu. But Brittany competes on the stage as well, and Troy Everett, who's a brown belt and a fantastic human being, he also goes up there and like competes, and then like gets right off the stage and gets back to work.
Yeah.
So it's pretty incredible.
Well, like I was saying with Mike Columbus, he did one here not too long ago as well, and
Yeah, that's
got a
right. Yeah,
submission win.
I think he footlocked someone
He
too. His
did.
footlocked are
This
rough.
this dirty bastard. I was talking to him afterwards online, and he's got this trick where he submits everybody who gets on his back. Apparently,
He's
it's
done that
well
to me.
known. Yeah.
Yeah, I hate it. Like it's so salty. I'm still salty over it.
Yeah, I bet it's got to be so embarrassing. Imagine just in the gym, but then doing it live under lights while it's being
Yeah,
broadcast, and that's how you get
yeah,
tapped. I would want to hide my head for sure.
yeah.
Poor
Like you
guy.
think you got it. It's like I didn't even cross my feet. Like if you cross your feet, like you deserve to get your foot broken, maybe. But like, you didn't even do that, and he's going on like foot locking you with his own feet. Like bullshit.
Yeah, yeah, it is. That should be illegal because it's too embarrassing.
Yeah.
I had a friend of mine who, one of the first tournaments he did at Blue Belt, he was he was super aggressive in this match and got on this guy early in the gi, took him down, passed his guard. The guy was setting up baseball choke grips while he was passing,
Hmm.
but dude's like, "Nah, this ain't gonna happen," and he spun and took this guy's back that he just passed his guard all the way on his back, both hooks in, working on the rear naked choke, and he goes completely unconscious from the baseball choke. So he literally started like twitching, spasming out cold, well
Oh my
on
god.
somebody's back.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that's a next level whoops.
Yeah. Next level whoops.
So on is this super fight that you had last year? Was that your first super fight?
The first like actual super fight, yeah. I had
Yeah.
like one at a small local tournament as a blue belt.
Mm.
Got my butt whooped. It was like a bracket, so it was like a super fight bracket.
Oh, okay. Not the
And
same.
so yeah,
Um,
yeah. So it
I,
wasn't really the same thing.
I was
But
gonna
it was
say
a lot.
for your first super fight, essentially, that's got to be intimidating going out under laser lights and fog smoke.
Yeah, I had helped them out with a couple of events, and so sometimes before like the event actually starts, like they got like the chance to roll on the stage, so I would roll with them, and so it was like I was used to that environment, and when you get up there, it is like dead quiet, and a lot of people think like, oh, it's because like no one's excited, and that's not it. It's like everyone's just like laser focused.
Mm.
And so I was actually like really, really relaxed when I got up there, which I didn't think. Because normally when I compete, I'm like just pure adrenaline. I'm like, I don't like this. Like, I hate competing. I'm up here
Yeah,
because I know it's good for me. But when I was up there, it was just like, no, like I'm in Zen mode, and it was like oddly peaceful in a
hmm.
way.
Well, that's
So
probably better than the alternative.
yeah.
Speaking of super fight promotions, the one that seems to be, I guess, forefronting that business right now is ACB. And have you
Hmm.
followed at all, since you've been so busy today, any of the drama that's been going on since the last one?
Um, I saw Gordon Ryan post something about it, and
Yeah.
I had to cover a couple of the matches, so I was
Hmm.
watching a good bit of it for Jiu-Jitsu Times. So, but I haven't really paid attention to the drama.
Well, essentially, I'm talking about like what Gordon was mentioning, how the guy who runs it, who I can't remember his name, and I probably couldn't pronounce it if I did, but he had a bit of a, I don't know if you'd say meltdown, but outlashing online about how he isn't too thrilled with the BJJ competitors' entertainment value, and
Hmm.
is, I guess, hinting that he wouldn't want to bring a lot of them back, which is, I mean, he was bringing over legitimate names over there. You know who was on that roster? Like
Yeah,
they're people who follow BJJ are interested by the names, but apparently people who don't follow BJJ wouldn't give a shit if they're just watching two guys hump each other for 15 to 25 minutes.
yeah,
Like
and
I,
I think that might be part of the problem. I was actually talking about this with someone because I was covering it, and I like got no sleep, and so I fell asleep by accident and woke up 3 hours later in a panic, thinking that I'd missed the matches I was supposed to cover, and they were only on like the seventh match. And so
yeah.
I'm like, that's a little. I feel like the 15-minute matches and 25-minute matches for the title matches, that's a little excessive, I think, especially for like a gi match where things can be kind of slow anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And so I almost think that because, and I could be totally wrong, but maybe if these competitors are so focused on just like surviving or winning by decision, or like just not gassing out in 15 minutes of rolling, like it might discourage that explosiveness that people kind of want and, you know, like to see in terms of like entertainment. And so you have these 15-minute matches in a gi, which is already kind of discouraging these athletes from like being explosive. And then you have 21 of them. Like,
Yeah.
it's different. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's nothing against the talent and the hard work and like, you know, just the overall ability of the competitors. Just as a spectator, I think it's probably a little much.
I agree. 21 matches of anything gets to the point of boredom. Even if like
Yeah.
1 out of 3 are interesting, you know, that's still a lot of duds.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I hate to say that blame can be placed on both sides, but you got a point about the saturation of their cards. Like we've
Yeah.
got some local MMA promotions around here, and they started that way as well, where they would just absolutely front load all of the amateur fights to let they have like 12 or 13 amateur fights before we got to the main card, which would have 5 pro. And I understand
Yeah.
from a promoter's side of it, like, well, we don't have to pay these Amis, so let's get as many of them in as we can and make money off the people. And that's, yeah, I don't know. It ended up being the same thing that by the time the main event came, people didn't really give a shit what was going on at that point. Besides the fact they were all drunk, they were like, can we just go home now? This is like the 15th fight, and we're only 2 fights into the main card.
Yeah. And that's kind of, and like jujitsu, I think is hard to watch as a spectator sport anyway. Like, I love jujitsu. Like, it is like truly like it is part of my identity at this point. And I struggle hard unless I'm personally invested in a match. Like, I struggle to watch it.
Yeah,
Um, and so when you take that and you stretch it out, like, and I understand, you know, maybe their perspective is like, oh, like these MMA fights can go for that long, but like jujitsu is different. And it just seems like a little much. And so I don't want to say like, oh, I was suffering, but like it was a little hard to like sit and like actually watch these matches. It was kind of like, man, like, when's this going to be over? You know, and I don't think that's a good feeling for someone to have when they're watching an event like that.
yeah,
And it
especially
bums me
someone
out
who
because those
does it.
competitors are really high level and it's such a cool event. But it's just, I think, I don't want to say like there's blame on both sides, but I think there's like a way to meet in the middle with that. Like the competitors could maybe amp it up a little more, but at the same time, like maybe it needs to be tailored a bit more to be a spectator event.
I saw,
You know?
like to Cole's note, kind of what Gordon was talking about in his. I thought it was a pretty well written up. What would you call it? Reply or response to
Mm-hmm.
ACB's outcry over what happened. Basically, he was saying that the even though we have the best of the best of BJJ, you know, arguably coming over to ACB, the problem is that they made their name and their titles in an amateur organization, being the IBJJF. So
Mm-hmm.
they aren't like pro athletes coming over, and they are bred and like highly honed and tuned machines to win by an advantage, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Because the IBJJF doesn't care whether they win or not. Like, quite honestly, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change their event. They're getting paid either way. Whereas a pro event like ACB does care if they win and how. So
Mm-hmm.
you kind of like, I get the point that they got to change their mentality if they expect to play in both arenas.
Yeah. And I think, especially in recent years, like, especially with athletes like Gordon and Gary, like, all these guys, especially with promotions like EBI and things like that, like, there's been a rise more in professional jujitsu, and people are kind of looking at that. I don't want to say more than IBJJF, but like, the playing field is getting a little more level with those two. And so I kind of wonder if in the future, those events like ACB or, you know, similar events will start to have more of those like fighters or competitors that kind of like grew up in the sport envisioning it as like part of their career. So they grew up um, being more entertaining and like knowing how to talk themselves up
Hmm.
and, like competing as an entertainer and not just, to win by an advantage.
Yeah, yeah, I think you're right. I noticed that Eddie Bravo also put it out there to them to, you know, this is, he said, this is why I built EBI the way that I did. You should try an event under those rules or something similar. I bet you that it would help. So I'd be curious
Hmm.
to see if they're desperate enough to try changing the rule set like wholesale.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting because, like, for example, Fight to Win, to go back to them, like, they also have a lot of matches on the card, like, normally like 30 or so. So it's a lot. However, their matches are only like around 6 minutes. Mine was 6 minutes. So, it's not multiple rounds. And,
Hmm.
they have like the amateur card and like it builds up in excitement as the night goes on in terms of like experience and like big names and things like that. So, to me, I don't know. And that's kind of another thing with ACB. Not that it's a bad thing to stack your card with awesome competitors, but it's like you really gotta pick and choose. Like you don't like it doesn't really build up in
Yeah,
that sense.
that's
Like it
true.
kind of
It
does, but
doesn't
like
have
not
that
to the extent.
crescendo. Yeah. Um,
Yeah. So like I couldn't just be like, oh, I'll just wait, until like the really good guys come on. It's like there's good guys throughout the card, which is great in theory, but like for someone who doesn't want to sit through an entire 7 hour event or like have that playing in the background on their computer for 7 hours because you
yeah.
don't know when that's going to come on, like, that's kind of a little, I don't know how that really works.
Well, I can tell you, as like I said, a promoter myself,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be much more extreme in ACB's uh, side of the world, or at least at the level of promotion that they're at. Um, is they're paying these athletes, like you're saying, really, really talented athletes who are probably asking for legitimate dollars. Apparently,
Mm-hmm.
they're being paid very well and flown over, and accommodations, the whole thing. It's a pretty big deal to be an athlete under their roster.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting out serious dollars, and I guess it's not. Uh, it should be expected of their athletes to perform up to the dollars that they're making at a professional level. Like, doesn't that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And like, I'm not in a place because, like, I don't really compete a whole lot. Certainly, definitely not at that level. But um, again, I think a big part of it is just the way those athletes were brought up in jiu-jitsu. And like, I don't know if it's like instinct that they want to be like kind of play it safe. Like the main event with Lucas Lepre and Davi Ramos, the commentators kept saying like they have so much respect for each other because they weren't really like going for crazy takedowns or pulling guard, flying armbars. Like they respected each other so much, and they knew that like the smallest mistake could cost them big, and so they spent so much of the match on their feet. And like for them, in an IBJJF match or something, like that small mistake or like doing the wrong thing or letting your opponent capitalize on that, like that could be the difference between like an advantage and not an advantage. And so, title or no title, but in an event like that, like you can't afford to not do anything,
Yeah, I guess here's the problem is if you're the promoter, how do you incentivize people who are, bred to win to do something that's risky? Like you look at, I mean, the UFC's been dealing with this for a decade. They've had
Yeah.
their knockout of the night, submission of the night, and now just performance of the night bonuses that don't like. I don't think they really change the outcome of any given fight. To be honest, it's just if you happen to get a knockout, you're in the running. Like
Yeah.
nobody's going out there swinging for the fences because I might make an extra 30 grand or something because they're more
Yeah.
like if I lose this I might get cut. Um,
Yeah.
so I don't know what the answer is. It might just be more about trying to bring in entertaining competitors as opposed to highly credentialed competitors, or finding that
Yeah.
that middle ground in there. Like there's like you're mentioning all the Danaher Death Squad guys. They've done a really good job, I think, of not only winning like fantastically in a lot of their matches, but also like keeping that personality fire going in between on social media. Like you've got
Yeah.
Gary Tonin, you've got Gordon Ryan. I guess to a lesser extent, you've got some of the up and comers that are in there, but it's who else do we have out there in BJJ that you would want to see, or people would want to pay money to see, regardless of their performance? Do you know what I mean? Like, or of their like world credential.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of the 10th Planet guys also have that, like that entertainment value to
Yeah,
them.
you're right.
And I think that's part of the reason why, that like rivalry between 10th Planet and, the Danaher Deskar or whatever is like so entertaining to follow. It's because like both sides are fun to watch.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And they're fun to follow. It's why a lot of athletes with like, they get criticized for like having a big mouth, but like people watch their matches, like people want to see their grudge matches. And like, I don't necessarily like that at its core, but like
it works.
Like my lizard brain likes that, what I mean? Like, I'm like, I want to see you guys who hate each other, like go against each other,
Yeah.
So, and again, I think that even, how they have these already like very established competitors, but I think if you incentivize even lower level or like not completely recognized competitors, like, hey, if you can provide good entertainment, like we provide a platform for you to kind of build your name a bit. Because like, look at what happened. Like Fight to Win has a lot of those highlights on Flow. Like Flow puts up like, look at this crazy submission, and like people have like really built their names and like built seminars off of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, I don't know how to fix it, but I think it's worth taking a look at seeing what works for other promotions that are doing well with that stuff and seeing what works for them and saying like, hey, maybe we can give this a try.
Well, let's take a little turn in the conversation here. Since we're talking about social media, you yourself are obviously very active on social media, on Instagram, on Facebook. I was talking to Rob from McDojo Life on the last podcast, and he had
awesome.
Yeah, he's a cool guy. He had an interesting insight that I can echo as well in my own experience, where Instagram seems to be a lot more of accepting, loving, caring, interactive crowd, whereas Facebook is just like vitriol and opinions. And I can only imagine being an article writer, you're putting 6,000 words out there every time you post something for JJT. You got to have like a skin 12 inches thick when it comes to people who are giving their opinions on every single comment section. So tell me, how do you take, I guess, quote unquote criticism from people that just don't even deserve to be putting their words underneath your hard work?
It doesn't. When I first started, like when I was a blue belt and like I obviously didn't have any kind of a name, like in the media world or like whatever. And that got to me sometimes because I was like, that's my hard work, like, how dare you? But like, I actually started out doing like a lot of viral writing. So like all the clickbait titles, like, you won't believe number 5.
Oh, you didn't.
So I wrote some like really ridiculous stuff. Like one thing I sent to, my boss was like 23 objects that looked like they just sharted their pants.
Oh,
I wrote,
wow.
like, that is
put that on the resume.
Work of mine that is on the internet somewhere right now. And so like I've written like a lot of like weird stuff like that. And so, people will criticize that for probably very valid reasons because it is stupid, And so I kind of, I guess, built a skin with that because I'm like, yeah, like I can get on board with that. Like that's totally ridiculous. Like that's a valid point. But a lot of the stuff that I write for Jiu-Jitsu Times is I try to make it like positive and encouraging and uplifting.
That's just what they want to shit on too.
Yeah. Well, and like it's always, I joke that like every time I mention the word woman in a title, comment section is going to be a shit show. Every time I say like, oh man, the article I wrote about stop defending sexual predators just because they're good at sports, so much hate for that. Like,
really?
Like I suffered real life consequences for that I won't get into. But like people were really, really butthurt about that one. And so it's always like the ones where I think like this is something people need to hear, and like who should be against this, that people are like, well,
Right.
actually, like you shouldn't just judge this person because they raped somebody. That's in the past now. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what world am I living in?
Yeah, that's bizarro land. And like I said, only on Facebook it seems to pop up like that. I don't know. Do you find that that dichotomy?
Yeah, I mean, on Instagram, I think everything is so visual and there are a lot fewer opinions. And like Instagram in particular is very much a highlight reel. Like you don't post, like you take 100 selfies, you don't post the ugly ones, you post the best one. Or like for you with memes, like you don't post like, here's my worst meme ever.
Oh, I do that every
Or,
day.
and Facebook is a lot more word driven, I think.
Okay.
And opinion driven, and so it's not so much a highlight reel. It's like, here are my thoughts, like, and people put out their unedited thoughts a lot, and they feel like they can hide behind a screen, and people are like, oh, your inbox must be a dumpster fire. And like, my inbox is normally like people who write these really, really nice things that like I screenshot and save in my phone for when I'm having a bad day. So, like, if you've ever sent me something nice, like it's still saved there. But it's always like the people that want to be keyboard warriors, that want to be like, I'm so tough, look at me writing an angry comment on this article, or like, something like that. I don't really understand why. Maybe people are bored, but you're right. It's like an interesting.
I think there's got to be a whole branch of psychology being written about Facebook comment sections. It's
Yeah.
probably going to go in a 3-step volume next to the YouTube comment sections, which is probably a 10-volume set.
Oh my God, YouTube comments are. I feel bad for anyone who posts videos
So
on
do
YouTube.
I. I don't even want to do like a YouTube page that means anything for that reason, because these guys, like, I'm friends with Kent Peters, who does,
Yes,
yeah, exactly. He's super cool, flamboyant Canadian guy who puts
love
out
that guy.
excellent tutorial videos constantly. He's putting them out almost daily, um,
Yeah,
for free. And
yeah.
people, like, you go into some of the comment sections on the YouTube, and it's so bad.
Mm-hmm.
For what? For free jujitsu. It's so
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
Like, how can you
Like
have strong opinions about this?
that's the thing though. Like people try to find negativity in like stuff that where there really shouldn't be any negativity. Again, and like even on Jiu-Jitsu Times, I'll post up. I'm like, there is no way anyone's going to be able to find anything negative about this. And someone's like, well, actually, here's my angry opinion because I'm having a bad day, and like I'm going to criticize this person that I've never like. It's just like why be negative? Like you have this platform where you can say anything. Why are you using it to be a dick?
Yeah, I gotta say though, I am a little appreciative that they do that, because you seem to have just the most amazing retorts that you put up on your Facebook feed. As like, I never really know where they're coming from, specifically from what comment section, but you'll just bring it onto your feed to be like, look at this asshole, he's blah blah blah, but you'll put it in a witty way that makes my day. So I guess
Well,
that's the silver lining.
I'm glad that it makes you happy.
Yeah.
But one thing, I say this as like a joke, but like it's really true. Like it's like a fetish of mine when I embarrass someone so bad on the internet that they just delete their comment. Like that is my sexual preference, like embarrassing people on the internet. And so, yeah, when people are like particularly stupid, that's kind of satisfying. That's like my silver lining too.
That's the Ippon throw for comment sections.
Yeah.
That's match over.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I genuinely look forward to seeing anything that you put up on Facebook, because I know there's going to be some, I don't know, some juicy way that it gets put.
Thank you. That's so nice of you.
Yeah. So what is going on? You were mentioning before we started the broadcast here that your boyfriend is in Australia.
Yeah.
And you have plans of moving around yourself. So tell us, is this public knowledge or?
It's been like an open, not secret for a
Okay.
while, just because my boyfriend, who runs Grapple Apparel with his business partner, James Hunt, so they are my sponsors. And they said, hey, come visit Australia sometime, buddy. Because, like, you know, we all just became good internet friends, as internet friends do. And so I went over to Australia in October, and Dan, my boyfriend, and I, now my boyfriend, we just hit it off. And so it was kind of like how we didn't know how we were going to make it work, but it was like, you know, we like each other enough that we wanted to make it work. And so it was so much harder for him to come here, like to move here, that I was just like, you know what, like I lived in Costa Rica for 4 years. Like, you know, if I can do that, like I can move anywhere and be happy. So, I was just like, well, I'll get my visa and I'll come over there. So he comes over here for like a few weeks at a time. Like first it was 6 weeks, then 3 weeks. And then next time he comes over, he'll just go back with me. And so it'll be an adventure.
So, long story short, you're moving down to Australia with all the dingoes and stingrays.
Yeah, and I've always said, like, if I get eaten by a shark or swallowed by, I don't think they have anacondas down there. I
They
haven't really
don't.
looked, like, if I didn't think so. Like, if I
It's,
get eaten by, like, a giant spider or, like, whatever, I'm like, that's fine. That's an okay way to go. Like, that's a good story.
yeah, they're not the big snakes you got to worry about down there. It's the little ones that just kill you
Exactly.
dead.
Yeah, exactly. The ones you don't expect. And then they have all the dangerous Australian jiu-jitsu guys down there and
Yeah.
girls.
Yeesh. That
Yeah.
Craig Jones, he bites your heel, and that might as well be venom.
Yeah, exactly. Him, you got Lachlan Giles, you got Livia Glukowska. Like, you have all these, you know, a lot of them are from Absolute MMA, but like all these like crazy leg lock people
Mm.
from down under that haven't really heard about till Craig Jones like blew up on the scene.
Yeah. Believe it or not, before Craig Jones blew up on the scene, one of the foremost Australian grapplers that I was aware of, this is like maybe 4 or 5 years ago, was Sofia McDormand, then
Yeah.
Drysdale. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
she was the first female black belt from Australia, and she's won uh, many titles from. I guess the first time she won worlds, it was a brown black division split. I think she was still a brown belt, but she won the whole thing. So
Yeah.
legit talent there.
Yeah. Yeah. She's a badass too.
Yeah, have you hung out with her at all?
No, I haven't met her in person yet. I'm pretty sure we're Facebook friends and things like that. So like, I kind of like, you know, admire from a distance in a not creepy way. Um,
Well, I know she
but
puts
yeah,
together some of these seminars that are all female seminars. I
yeah,
think that was Mackenzie Dern part of it at some point, but there was a handful of high-end black belt female jiu-jitsu world champions who put together these super camps. And I remember seeing pictures. There's like 200 women at these things. I don't know how they all fit them
yeah,
in one venue.
yeah, yeah. She's done a really, really good job with that. Again, like I haven't followed that super closely, but I see her posting about that stuff, and I just like it's incredible, the work that she's done.
So I noticed, like you were saying, anytime you put the word woman into the headline, you can be sure that you're going to be getting some salty comments.
Uh-huh.
Um, but at the same time, I don't think that there's enough people out there doing that in the jiu-jitsu world, and I think that you're probably one of the foremost sort of heading that off from the journalistic standpoint. Do you see, are there any other female word warriors, I guess you could say, out there doing the jiu-jitsu thing?
Yeah, there's a good number. A lot of them have more like personal blogs.
Okay.
And in fact, Jiu-Jitsu Times has another one of our editors, Jill Gill, is she's a blue belt and she's one of our editors, and she does a very good job as well. And we have a few more female contributors. So yeah, there's a lot. I like it's late and I'm tired, and so like a lot of the names are escaping me. But like, there's a lot of female writers out there. But what's always kind of gotten to me, I don't want to say it's always like it gets to me, but people are like, oh, like you're the girl that write about like women's jujitsu. And I'm like, or like, you're the person that writes about women's jujitsu. I'm like, I really don't write a lot about women's topics. Or like, if you look through all my articles, like the ratio between like stuff I write about men and stuff I write about women is like great. Like it's not like I write exclusively female-based articles. And I think that's kind of a testament to how much of a need there is for more journalism about female jujitsu.
Yeah,
The
I'd
fact that
agree.
people are like, oh, like you're the writer that writes about women's jujitsu. I'm like, I'm not like the writer that writes about, like, I just put out like what I feel is a normal amount of content about like women's jujitsu, and it shouldn't be that sticks out that much. That's how I'm like seen. You know what I mean?
Do you feel like you would rather not be that person?
I would rather not be that person for the sake of the community. Like, I don't want women's jujitsu to be like this separate entity. And people say like, oh, but you play these like identity politics where like women's jujitsu is different from men's jujitsu. And like, in some ways it is. I don't want it to be like that. I want women to be able to go into gyms and not be treated differently. Like, I don't want it to be a different thing, but right now it is. And I think not calling it out like isn't doing anyone a favor, as for the community.
Well, you help either you're part of I've seen or you teach an all women's class. Is that right?
Yeah, I used to at a
Okay.
gym I used to be at.
I know a few other gyms that do that, and they, like, from what I'm seeing, they grow faster as an all women's group than it would be co-ed, at least to begin with, like to get more people through the door. I don't think that
Yeah,
that's a bad thing necessarily.
no, and I don't either. And a lot of that gets criticized a lot, which I don't really understand. People are like, oh, what about all men's jujitsu classes? And like, it's
What about
basically
them?
every class
Yeah.
that you go in, with a few exceptions. And the concept of like an all women's jujitsu class is one because like women train differently than men. I was talking about this with my female friend today because she trained with women from a different gym for like the first time, and she's like, wow, like they are really savages. I'm like, there is like a distinct difference between the way men roll with women, which maybe is a little more protective, or the ego comes in and they just want to crush you, and the way women roll with women, which is like, I've had to build myself up and prove myself in this male dominated sport, and like, I want to see if you've proven yourself, sort of thing. It's almost
Mm.
like lionesses going at each other, and it's cool, but it's so different. And so I think to have an environment where whether you're just starting out or like you're really into competitive jujitsu and just be surrounded by that,
Mm.
like, this is going to sound like so hippie-ish, but like that female energy, where you just go from woman to woman and you have that same vibe going on. I think that's really helpful, especially actually if you're going to compete and you have to face that different dynamic for the first time.
Well, that's a good point, actually. I didn't consider it until you just mentioned it, but it would be a benefit to train with more women as a woman competing against women. Does it do you any good to be competing against 9 out of 10 of your training partners that are men?
Yeah, I mean, it helps in some ways, but again, it's just different. I'm like 125, 130 pounds, depending on how much pizza I eat in a given week. Um, and so for me to go against a bunch of dudes that weigh 50 pounds more than me, that where some of them are like taking it way too easy on me. And so I'm not like being able to test my true abilities, or some of them are like, I don't want to get beat by a girl. And so, they just try to smash me, and I'm not getting like the level of training that I would get training with women who are, or just people, and not even women, like exclude the gender from it in the first place, but just someone who is my size, 125, 130, even 140 pounds, who's built like me, who is flexible like me. Like, there's just a distinct difference there. And I trained with, I think I was the only girl in my jujitsu class for the first year or two that I trained. And that was fine. And I got a lot out of it. But to be able, like, I've been to like a few all female seminars, and just being able to go from like, here's one girl who's built like, or like, here's another girl who's, at my level and is flexible like me. And to just be able to go from girl to girl like that and not have a break in terms of like having to switch my mentality of like, okay, now I'm rolling with someone who's huge or like super muscular and just trains differently. It's like, it's really, really beneficial to not have to like kind of switch your mindset with that.
Yeah, it makes
when
perfect
you're training
sense.
for competition.
Like you're saying, the guys that are either going too soft or too hard on you, that doesn't emulate what you're going to see in tournament when it comes to, women that are in your weight class that you are very, specifically within 5 or 6 pounds of, that have, like you're saying, all the same attributes. I I was talking to a black belt friend of mine that's in a city about 2 hours north of me years ago, and he was one of the first ones in his area who started an all women's class because his wife said that she wouldn't take up jujitsu. And mind you, he was already a black belt at this point. His
Mm-hmm.
wife would not take up jujitsu until he started an all women's class. His
Oh,
wife.
wow.
Yeah. And so for her sake, he did. And it ended up turning into one of like the fundamental movements of women's jiu-jitsu in my province.
That's so
Um,
cool.
yeah, but to circle back around, one comment that he made to me when we were discussing, like, I was just out of curiosity, what is the difference you find between training with a group of women and the regular guys that you're training with? And he said, you know, one thing that surprises me, and it probably shock you too until you realize it, is if you've got a woman in side control on you, it's almost 50% harder than getting a guy off of you because their center of balance is so much lower in their hips. They can root to the ground much better than most guys can. I'm like, huh,
Yeah.
I never considered that until now.
Yeah. I never really thought about that either.
But
Um,
as him being a black belt, I mean, he knows what he's talking about at that point. He's like, I can move my guys a lot easier than I can move my women when they get to side control.
yeah. And a thing I've noticed about women too is that, like, and especially like when you're smaller and flexible, like I get into tight spaces, even on big guys with great pressure. They're like, where the heck did you even get an elbow in there? Like, how, like, I just had you in side control. How do you have me in your guard? Because I'm a guard pulling piece of shit and I had to like find my way there. But,
Hey, fist
um,
bump.
yeah. But that's something that I think a lot of people don't realize either. Like people that train almost exclusively with men who maybe aren't, just built the same way. They aren't as flexible or they aren't as tiny where they can like weasel their way into those small spaces. That's a new challenge for them too,
hmm
when rolling with a woman.
Yeah, actually, now that you mentioned that, there's a lady who I train with named Naomi, who's a four-stripe white belt, who, no word of a lie, I shit you not, is the hardest guard in our gym to pass. Like for me,
Mm-hmm.
I have more of my rounds with her spent trying to pass her guard than any of the other guys, no matter of rank.
Uh-huh.
And that's for that same reason. She's bendy like Gumby, and she's got these knees and elbows that just find the tiniest little crack in my guard pass to reframe on. It's
Yeah.
equally awesome and extra frustrating to deal with.
That's a very good point.
So how long have you been training yourself now, Avery?
I think it's been almost 5.5, 6 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
And were you jumping around between a bunch of gyms? I know, like in high saturation areas, it seems to be a thing that people cross train quite a bit. Or did you kind of just hunker down in one gym?
Well, I started out actually when I was living in Costa Rica.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and so I started out with little Brazilian guy, and like the language there is Spanish. He spoke Portuguese, no Spanish, and so we had to like find like middle ground, because I'm like a gringa and like I spoke Spanish, but no Portuguese at the time, and so we had to find like that middle ground, and so that was neat. But I started out doing kickboxing and then like kind of transitioned into jujitsu from there. And so I started off with him, and then I ended up moving back to the States for a year, trained at more of like an MMA gym, and
Okay.
then went back to Costa Rica, trained with a guy who like I give most of the credit to my jujitsu for, Andre Oliveira, who's another Brazilian guy living in Costa Rica. And so there's like that particular area in San Pedro, there's a few different gyms within a few blocks of each other, which like you wouldn't expect there to be that much jiu-jitsu in like little Costa Rica, but there is,
Hmm.
and it's pretty neat. And so we didn't do a whole lot of cross training because a lot of those instructors are Brazilian and they're very traditional and just like, if we're friends, then you can, but like otherwise, like stay at your home gym. But when I would come back and visit, because my whole family's from like the Pittsburgh area, and so I would stay with my mom. Um, And I had a lot of friends in the area, and I didn't really have like a specific home gym. And so I would just like bounce around to like Ohio or West Virginia or like other gyms in Pittsburgh, and just like do a lot of visiting.
Hmm.
But now, again, like I'm rooted at the academy in Pittsburgh. So like I occasionally do some cross training, but like it's like I have a home gym. And so I don't do like a crazy amount like I used to.
How much training are you doing in a given week? Like we were just talking about your hectic day you had today, just for, well, I was going to say one training session, but it was really three in one. So
Yeah.
if you were to count every individual class that you either teach or participate in, what are we talking about?
Well, right now there's about 3 classes that happen at the academy, plus like, 1 or 2 open mats per week. But the gym, we had some really bad flooding in Pittsburgh
Oh,
a couple weeks ago. And so the gym flooded. And so
ah,
the gym's been closed it's really been a heroic effort from everyone, like rebuilding and like replacing everything that needs to be replaced. So this is my first training session in about 3 weeks. So
oh
I was pretty
no.
out of shape, but I try to get in like between 3 and 5 if I can per week.
That's a pretty healthy amount, I think.
Yeah, so it's not excessive. And I was at a point once where I was training, I don't want to say excessively, but it was enough that it was like taking its toll on me where like I wasn't enjoying jujitsu like I
Yeah.
used to, and it felt like an obligation. And so it was like, okay, if I can strike a nice balance, because I'm never going to be a world champion. Like I know, like I just don't have that desire to
Yeah.
train that much to be a world champion. Like jujitsu is something more for me. And so for me, the release that I get from it, doing it a few times a week rather than every single day for 3 hours a day, like I prefer that to just like hating it and going because I feel obligated to.
This is something that I think people either learn by experience or they get burned out from and miss the experience altogether. And that is for me. Um, I've plateaued before myself. The
Mm-hmm.
first time, noticeably, when I was partway through my blue belt and I took up MMA,
Mm-hmm.
and I went from training 2 to 3 times a week to 6 to 8 times a week.
Wow.
And that was first of all, it was a big shock on my system. So
Mm-hmm.
I was overtraining myself almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
But then even after my body got into that rhythm, I noticed just technically I wasn't progressing nearly as fast as when I was training 2 to 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that retrospectively, and a couple other times I've plateaued, I've noticed that you have to kind of take a chance to center yourself on why you're going to jiu-jitsu at that point. Even if you've got tournaments that you're working towards, or you're trying to get to your next belt or whatever it is, really the only reason that people go to jiu-jitsu for years at a time, in my opinion, has to do with they enjoy it. It's
Mm-hmm.
fun. And if it's not fun, if you take that aspect out of the equation, I think that the answer goes to zero at that point. Like, why am I here anymore if it's not fun? You're dragging your injured
Yeah.
ass into a gym that you just saw 12 hours ago to roll with some guys that are going to grind you into the ground again, and you're going to leave, feeling more injured and just like you didn't feel quite on your game and nothing's working for you. And if you go through a few months like that, like that's it might be what caused you to take a quote unquote hiatus for a year at a time.
Yeah, exactly. And some people enjoy it that much that they can just do it and do it and do it and have multiple training sessions per day every day, and they still love it. And I tried to be that person more when I was a blue belt. And then I just realized like nope, like I was getting really down on myself because I wasn't seeing the progress that I felt like I should be seeing. I began to like resent the gym. I resented jujitsu. Like it wasn't what I wanted out of the sport. Like it wasn't why I got into it. It wasn't why I went every day, And so it's like I would much rather not progress as much. Again, I'm not trying to be a world champion. I do it as a hobby because I love it. I compete because it's good for me, and like that's it. And so I don't really care a whole lot for people's opinions when they say like, oh, like you'll never be great if you don't push yourself and like discipline. Like yeah, you need to push yourself, but like, don't do it to the point that you hate it. Like I do it for the love of it, and I don't ever want that taken away from me again.
Definitely. I've come across certain gyms that when you come in as a new student, or you're enrolling your child or something into jiu-jitsu, they've got on the registration form, the sign up form, what is my goal in jiu-jitsu? And I think that
Mm-hmm.
that's something that has to be reconciled per person, and it doesn't always have to be the same thing too. You can change your goal from time to time, depending
Mm-hmm.
on what your life is doing at the time, what your attitude is at the time. But if you don't set that, both in your own mind as well as let your coach know that that's your goal, then maybe, I don't know, wires can get crossed at that point. I feel like if your coach feels like he's trying to train a champion and you just want to be a hobbyist, or vice versa, you're trying to be a champion, but your coach is treating you like a hobbyist, then that can, I think, cause friction that could uh, like ruin a good thing that could be going on there. Nobody
Yeah.
wants you to quit, right? Including yourself, including your coach, including your teammates. So uh, getting on the same page would be beneficial to everybody.
No, I completely agree with you. And I think that's important. I think it's important too to just check in with yourself. And like when you're feeling down or like, man, like I want to quit or I don't want to go today. Like, there's that like motivational quote, like, before you quit, like remember why you started or something like that. And I think it's important to kind of sit down with yourself and say, like, why did I start? Like, am I still on that track? Has my reason for doing this changed? Like, did I start just wanting to, be a hobbyist and now, I want to be a world champion? Like for me, it was self-defense. Like I wanted to learn how to defend myself. And now it's just like, it's a valuable tool in managing my mental health. It's, my entire friend group pretty much at this point is, in jujitsu.
Yeah.
Like I think you have to sit down and kind of reevaluate that every now and again. Like, okay, if I'm not enjoying this anymore, why not? If I'm not getting the results that I want, why not? Like, what is my goal right now? What was it before? And is the path that I'm on, like, the path towards that goal that I have now?
You touched on something in that last sentence that I wanted to bring up eventually, anyways. And
Mm-hmm.
there's been a movement for a few years at least that I've noticed that's started to get a little more public headway in submit the stigma,
Mm-hmm.
talking about mental health and jujitsu, or at least within the community. I mean, mental health is a universal issue, and
Mm-hmm.
all you have to do is look to famous deaths recently, and most of them are suicides. And
Mm-hmm.
it always comes back into the light, mental health. And I how do you think that jujitsu plays into that sphere? Because I know a number of people who are would consider themselves on, I don't know if you'd call it a spectrum or what you would call that, but they're in that group that have to, watch their mental health for personal safety reasons, and they train jujitsu as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know many people like that?
Yeah, I'm one of those people,
Okay.
which I'm very open about. Like, I have pretty bad depression. I'm an anxious wreck. And that's one reason I do jujitsu is like it helps me with that. And like I have friends who are in the mental health field as a career, and they're also, in jujitsu, and they agree that like what jujitsu offers in terms of like it gives you a reason to get out of the house. Exercise releases endorphins. You're getting social interaction, which is a big deal for a lot of people. Like it's giving you, I guess, kind of like an obligation, and like when you finish up, it's like I did something today.
Hmm.
Like because that's a big thing with depression. It's like it's hard to get out of bed some days, but like if you can go to jujitsu and you can survive, an hour long, 2 hour long class, and you go home, it's like I learned something today. I exercised. Like I did all this stuff in just a 2 hour space. Like that, I think is huge. And that like people people do this with like a lot of things. They say like, oh, like nature is an antidepressant. Like jujitsu is not a cure for depression. It helps alleviate symptoms. And so it drives me a little bit crazy when people are like, oh, like jujitsu, like just go to jujitsu, it'll cure your depression, blah, blah, blah. Like people were saying that when, Anthony Bourdain took his life, which, obviously horrible. But people are saying like, oh, if he just did more jujitsu, he would have been fine. And like, it's not about that. Like, if somebody breaks their ankle, you don't say like, you just ignore it and like take a walk and like, it'll be okay. Like, you get treatment for it. And so I think it's good to recognize that jiu-jitsu has a lot to offer for mental health, but at the same time, if you feel like it's not helping, even if you feel like it is helping, like get into, a counselor or go to a psychiatrist. Like, it's okay to be on medication. It's not, you're not weak for it. It's you, like, your brain is sick and you're helping it, like, and that's fine. But I think to go back to your original question, I think jiu-jitsu has a lot to offer for mental health. I don't think it should be relied on as like the be all end all. It doesn't cure anything.
So do you find for yourself it's more of like a supplementative fix, at least for the time that you're doing it?
Yeah, because I think when I'm training, it's like that's all I can focus on. If I'm focusing on all the tough shit that's happening in my life, I'm going to get choked out. I'm going to get my arm broken. I'm going to get heel hooked. And like, I don't want that. So at least for the time being, it's like, I can get that out. And like, I can get especially like when I feel anxious, like, okay, I go to jujitsu, I get all that like pent up energy out, and I come out, I'm like, life is not that, like, I don't have that much to worry about anymore. And so I think for the time being, it helps. And then even afterwards, again, you get that boost of like, I did a lot of cool stuff today in a 2-hour time period. And so that's helpful in the long run as well.
Yeah, I'm not really in that mentality, so I have to try to sort of look at it from a third person. I try to get everybody's opinion who's in that theater, because I try not to take the opinions of people who aren't,
Yeah.
Like, I can put names and faces to people who have to deal with this daily. So they're the ones that I want to kind of try to understand from the outside. Because for myself, I'm running a school now as well. And if I have a student that's coming in that says they struggle with depression, I want to know, how can I help? Am I helping? Can I do more?
Yeah. And a lot of times, like, it's a very personal subject for me, because one of my best friends, who's also a jiu-jitsu girl, she committed suicide almost 2 years ago.
Yeah, I remember.
And so, so that's I think when the subject really hit me hard, because she was like, if you take the person in your life you would least expect that from, like, if you were like, oh, one of your friends committed suicide, and you're like, who's the person I would like, that would not even be on my radar? That was like her. Like, she was happy, she had friends, like, she had such a great support system, she had future plans, and like, she was capable of having those thoughts, and like, her illness eventually won, and none of us were aware of it. And so a lot of people won't necessarily come to you and say like, I'm feeling depressed, I need help, I'm feeling suicidal, I want to hurt myself. I think for me, what's most important is knowing that I have resources, that if I'm feeling a certain way, I have people that I can go to and say like, man, like, I just need someone to talk to, or like, I'm feeling this way, I'm having these thoughts. And instead of being like, especially in like, we're in a combat sport, and I think a lot of people have it in their head like, I'm a big tough person, I need to suck it up, just like I do with jiu-jitsu. Like, I push myself, I don't need to succumb to these thoughts and like ask for help. But I think just knowing that I have resources, like that I have a good support system, I have people that I can go to, where if I'm like, today has been really, really bad, they will sit with me and talk me through it, and just like kind of remind me like, hey, we're here for you. If you need us to come over and sit with you, we'll do that. If you need us, to do this, that, or the other thing for you, we'll do that. And so, I think as a coach or a teammate, you might not know that you have students or teammates that are going through that, but just to give off the general vibe of like, we're here for you, we're a family, like we depend on you. You know, if you have a student that doesn't show up for a week, normally they're there every day and then they just don't show up for a week. You know, call them, say, hey, is everything okay? Check in. Like if you let them know that they're loved, they're not a burden, because that's what depression will tell you, is that like, no, don't reach out to these people. Like they don't want to hear from you. Like you're just annoying them. You're a burden on their life. So if you take the initiative to reach out, and just be a good friend, be a good teammate, be a good coach, be a good whatever, I think that is like, that's the most that people can do most of the time.
That was really good. I think there's a lot that people can get from that. If you found that you're coming, your mind is going these places, and you don't have that type of support group, do you feel like if you were that person that didn't have that at home, that didn't have it in their friends, but you trained, do you think that they would talk to a coach or a teammate? Is that like an outlet that they can rely on, or?
I think it depends on the person. And I think that's something when you talk about like submit the stigma and things like that, I think that support needs to come from both directions, where you have the support system, the friends, teammates, coaches saying like, hey, I'm here for you. We have a good family environment. And you, the person who's suffering from this, working on yourself, which is really freaking hard, and I know this, and like, it shouldn't be like up to you to fix like your brain that's not feeling good, but like you have to constantly get on yourself to be like, I need to reach out to people, or, if I'm not feeling good, like I need to identify like those triggers, like this is what makes me feel bad. I need to see my coach or my teammates, my friends, as people that I can go to. I need to identify the people where if I'm feeling like I'm in crisis mode, even if I'm just not feeling good, like just have something, like, I don't want to say have the courage to do that, but build yourself up to identify those people that you could go to if you needed to, and like be vulnerable, which is hard. So,
Well, I hope that maybe somewhere out there in the vast internet world, somebody who needed to hear that is going to hear that, because that's all very sound advice, I think. So,
no, I hope
I,
so. It's hard, but I hope people like understand that there's people out there.
yeah, yeah, because I know yourself, like you're saying, as well as myself, I've had a friend who you didn't think was going to be that person until you got the news, and it's
Mm-hmm.
not, it's terrible being the person left over as well. So I think
Yeah,
whether you're depressed or not, it's important to try to help that situation.
yeah,
Um,
I agree with you. I'm sorry that happened.
yeah, I mean, the thing, I'm 35 years old right now, and I find with every year that passes, more and more of statistics you never thought were going to apply to you just do. They just aggregate. I can
Yeah.
I can look back on my high school graduation class and pick like throw a statistic out there and it'll hit one of them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
It's life, which is unfortunate, but I think since we're all in the big soup together, we can help each other get through it as much as we can. We're all getting through our own shit as well. But
Yeah.
speaking of which, I know it's getting late over there. I'm keeping you up like past 1 o'clock. So, um, where can people reach you, read you, get in touch with you if they need to, Avery?
So I'm pretty cool about, I'm since I'm cool about like, I'm a little bad about responding to Facebook messages just because like I'm lazy, but especially if you ever need help or if you have questions, you can reach down there. Just Averi Clements. Instagram, I'm BJJ Averi, BJJ Averi. My articles are on Jiu-Jitsu Times, and yeah, that's basically. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of if I remember to respond. But I'm always like, I've had people reach out to me that have never spoken to me before and said like, hey, like, can I get your advice on this? And I'm always happy to do that.
Well, that's perfect. That's one of the wonders of the interwebs we live in is you can just
Yeah.
reach out and touch somebody, and with subjects like this, it could be life saving. So anytime, if any listeners are out there need to reach myself or Avery or just someone to talk to, there's a lot of people in the community and the industry who are happy to do that. So,
Yeah.
Avery, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on here. I've taken about an hour out of your already busy day.
Thank you so much.
But good luck in Australia.
Thank you.
Try to pick up an accent. I want to have you back on here with an Aussie accent.
I would love that. And if it's okay, I'd like to also just give a quick shout out to my sponsors, Grapple Apparel, who are an Aussie brand. So if you want to support an Aussie brand, if you're from Australia and want to support an Aussie brand, good couple of guys doing a lot of good work. So
right on, Grapple Apparel. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next You, Me, Endless.